Welcome to the Self Connection Podcast. I have the pleasure of welcoming John Banman back for our second conversation. And John, you and I have been talking about a great variety of things related to Virginia Satir's work and trying to understand some of the central words that are related to deep experiences that have maybe a transcendent quality. Some might call it a spiritual quality. And I thought, in addition to some conversations we've had about a man named David Bohm, Bohm, and there's a documentary called Infinite Potential that recently came out that we've both seen, and we've been, I think, looking at some of his lectures. He's passed away now. I think he died in 2014, I believe, maybe earlier. But I thought you and I could have a conversation about the connection between David Bohm's work and Virginia Satir. So I think maybe I would turn it to you to start us off with an initial question. What are some questions as you've been looking at his work? And I know you've been reviewing a lot of Virginia Satir's writings that are officially published and also things that are in the archive with written notes and things like that. What's a question that you have that's been percolating in your mind that could start us off? And I would also like to preface what I had stated before we started recording is that instead of doing a formal meditation for 5 minutes before we talk, I would like us to engage in this conversation as if it were a meditation, to bring as much awareness and presence to the connection between us and what we're talking about, and to try to make these words come to life as much as possible. So it's not just an abstraction, but we try to really experience something as we're speaking about whatever we're speaking about. So John, I want to turn it over to you now to get us started with an initial question, an area of exploration when you think about Virginia's work and what you've been seeing with David Bohm. Where do your thoughts go?
Well, yeah, the first thing is I want to remember that when I spent time with Virginia Satir, she would use the word wholeness a lot. And she would always spell it with W-H-O-L-E, W-H-O-L-E. And I think we heard it in a very, very shallow level of wholeness, just being one so-called oneself in a very everyday kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I always thought there was more to it. There was more to than just wholeness in a very physical kind of level. And when I listened to the tape about David Bohm, and he described it much more as a universal wholeness, in being in tune and being part of the whole universe.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that sort of triggered me to say, well, probably Virginia Satir meant that all along, but we didn't hear it.
Yeah.
Now I can hear it. And it's kind of exciting to say, okay, she already talked about it. It doesn't mean that we actually noticed it or we appreciate it, but now I can go back and say, my guess, my sense, not my guess, my sense is that she really meant what David Bohm talked about. So I was trying to make that connection.
Yeah.
That's what got me excited.
Yeah, that is really exciting because my question is, well, what the hell did David Bohm really mean when he said
Well,
wholeness? I mean, that's a complicated thing. And I think there's something that Virginia did that was important because she was part of this humanistic movement to say each individual has worth, whether you're a woman or a child or a person of a different color, each person is whole. So I think there was an important step. There was kind of like a linear step that needed to take place, of which she was an important leader. But I think what we're going to talk about is something beyond that, which is how separate are we in my body over here, your body over there,
Hmm.
how much are we connected? How much are we part of a whole, a different kind of way of thinking about whole that's different than thinking about my own individual self, which gets into maybe something like self-esteem, my thoughts and feelings about myself.
So to me, then it has to come into the whole word of energy. At what level of energy are we connected? And it seems like what to me, with David Bohm talking about it, he talked about it from physics.
Hmm.
And there have been people like you and maybe me who have said that quantum physics has a great um, effort, great success of supporting some of the stuff that Satir talked about. So now here is a physicist talking about wholeness, and there's Satir talking about wholeness, and what are the connection?
Hmm.
So yes,
Hmm.
we can look at each person is whole and is worthwhile, but maybe we are all part of a universal energy,
Hmm. Hmm.
and we can be connected at that level of energy.
Hmm.
Or maybe we are automatically connected in that level of energy.
Yes, yes, and then something happens that that creates the illusion that we're not that we're not connected to that larger
Yeah.
energy. And one of the things that David Bohm says at the beginning of that documentary, which I highly recommend that everyone check out, Infinite Potential, and I'll put a link for it. He starts off by saying that when you look out into the sky at night and you see all the stars, you focus on the stars as things to pay attention to. But there's some kind of comment he makes about, well, the space between the stars is the thing to really pay attention to and what's going on there. And he also describes this childhood memory where he's jumping across rocks on a stream or a river or something, and then he notices as a child, maybe 10 or 11 years old, he's not focusing on one rock at a time. He gets
Mm.
into a flow. He gets into a flow, and there's a relationship between him and the whole environment. And that was sort of a beginning metaphor or analogy that he used to do what he was trying to do in physics, which, I mean, the mathematics of the physics, the theoretical part of it is much over my head. But from what I understand from the description, he was trying to integrate quantum physics, which is about the microscopic level, and the theory of relativity created by Einstein, which is the more macro level. And so, what is that interweaving, and what is that relationship?
Mhm.
And then I think then we transition to trying to discover what it means for there to be such a thing as wholeness. What does it mean to be whole? What does it mean to be in touch with um, space? And I think space has been an interesting word that I've been thinking about, because um, a bowl that doesn't have space has no capacity to hold anything, right? So if it
It,
loses that emptiness, then what what use does it have? And there's this, I think, Zen story about a student coming to the master, and the student, pontificating and showing everything that he knows, and then the master Zen teacher can't get a word in edgewise, and then finally the Zen master starts pouring tea into his student's cup, and
mm,
pours and pours and pours until it starts spilling all over the place, and then the student gets kind of aware of what's going on. He says, "Master, what are you doing?" And the master says, um, if you have no space for my tea, you know, if you have everything in your cup, how can
mm,
you taste my tea?
yeah.
So space is, I think, it's very important. I'm not exactly sure what it is, and maybe the problem
Mm,
is maybe prematurely defining it. So yeah, what's coming up for you?
yeah. No, I want to tell you a story about a pianist. The pianist was praised about his playing of his music, his piano. And he said, no, anybody can play those notes. It's the silence between them
Mm,
that I'm really good at.
hmm.
It's silence between the notes
Yeah,
that I pay attention to.
yeah.
To me, it's that whole concept. It's what is between. What is the between there? Not what
Hmm.
is. what is the star, but what is between there? What is between the notes and the piano? What
So,
is there?
so maybe before we make it like, well, right now we're emphasizing words like space or space between the silences between the notes. There's something that I want to make a connection to, which is there's something called the double slit experiment in
Mhm.
physics. Now, I'm probably going to butcher this, but basically, they're shining light through different blocks. So there's basically two slits, and they're watching, does this light behave like a particle or does it behave like a wave? Now, I'm not sure precisely what that means, but the sort of way that I would bring that to maybe psychology is, or to even the example of the pianist is hitting the note, the particular note, like if that's a form, and what happens between the notes is something that's formless. In our human consciousness, a particular pattern of thinking, of behaving, of feeling is a form. And our ability to detach or to let go or to soften those forms might be the formless. And so I don't want to emphasize that, formless is somehow right, or the right place to place our emphasis, or the form is the right place. But I think there is this relationship. And I connected it to that presentation I did about wanting to integrate the hierarchical level with the seed level,
Mhm.
um, which is basically trying to talk about the same thing, that there's, when you walk into a school, there's a certain form, there's certain expectations, there's a certain role, there's a certain hierarchy of roles. And there's the seed level, which Virginia talked a lot about, which is we're all unique manifestations of life force. And so what does it mean to be either or what does it mean to have these elements interacting with each other as if they were part of one whole? And so this is, I think, what I'm trying to understand more
Mm.
and to experience more, because I think we're playing with these concepts or these realities all the time. Here we are having a conversation, and I'm using words to form ideas or energies that I'm in touch with or want to be in touch with and feel as yearnings. And I'm trying to connect with you and to see if you and I can engage in a flow, um, where it's not either or. It's not, I know everything, so nothing more needs to be said, or as I know nothing, and so I can't say anything, but there's some sort of a mixture happening. So, yeah.
More at a more basic level. Yes, I want to get back there. I really like that. But at the basic level, when I look at or listen to Virginia Satir, the many times she said and it's not or, it's and it's
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm.
I could find all kinds of references to her always saying and. You can't just do either or. And I
Yeah.
think that is one of the gifts that she's giving to you, even though others might not appreciate it, that the hierarchy and the seed model are and.
Yes.
There's an
Yeah.
and. We miss the and.
Yeah.
We looked at.
I, I,
Now,
wa- sorry. Go ahead.
no, sometimes I thought of looking at, we need to differentiate before we can connect. And maybe we need to connect before we can integrate. And sometimes we have talked so much, especially I feel with my experience in Asia and looking back at our culture, we have been so busy individuate. I mean, we have a whole family therapy system that makes individuation one of the primary
Mm-hmm.
components. And I just wonder if we have stopped too early
Yeah.
and that we are really much more connected, or even better, integrated, or we are part of the whole. So maybe there are this
Mm.
gradation of individuation, connection, integration,
Yeah.
wholeness.
Yeah. No, I think that there's a there's an initial step where maybe I engage in a behavioral pattern where my anger takes over and I shout at someone or I go to aggressiveness and I'm just not conscious of it. And so, engaging in some awareness, developing an awareness of maybe where these patterns come from, noticing what I do, that awareness helps me separate from the pattern. So I could say, this isn't me. And then this is just psychological or psychic energy flowing in a particular way based on what I saw my parents doing, or because of my temperament, or because of, pre-established patterns,
Mhm.
the fight pattern that's instinctive. And then coming to an awareness of it, I can separate and see choice. Then as I'm sort of playing in this space of awareness, I could see many different choices that I might have. I could, um, just try to relax myself. I could express what I'm angry about, or dig deeper and see what needs or unmet needs are being missed by me or by someone else, and express it openly. But I think to what you were saying, if we lose connection to everything that I'm doing is towards individuation, then I might lose sense of, I might come to be aware that I am whole, but I might lose a connection to the sense that there's a wholeness between me and my family, or me and, let's say, the human family, or the whole universe, right? So it gets bigger
Yeah.
and bigger and
Yeah.
bigger. And I think, well, why, I don't know if this is the right direction, or even if that's the right way to frame it, but um, why do you think that might be useful, John, to think about wholeness beyond the individual? How might that help us?
That's a funny question.
I mean, it might be true, and it might just be worth knowing the truth about what's going on, in this life. But
That's why is it important to know that you're needing oxygen to survive? I think we are human nature. We're interested in understanding, what is reality, what is really the whole thing about. And for me to to ignore this part of life's experience when we get all kinds of indication to it. Maybe Satir by intuition, David Bohm by physics, by quantum physics. We are all finding out that there's more than my thoughts, my feelings, my body. There's more, and to me, it's just, well, I don't know if that's a cliche, but it's just human nature that we want to understand who we are and incorporate more than just me, you know.
I
So
I think,
so
yeah, but I think it's more than just understanding.
yeah.
I think there is the possible benefit in, um, that if I'm only attached to the forms of my thought, and I have a conclusion that, let's say, you being the age that you are, you belonging to the ethnic group that you belong to, that somehow we are too different to connect, right? I just have this pre-established
Mm,
division. Maybe you subscribe to a particular religion. It creates division, and once there's division, there's conflict. And so we see this across all kinds of lines, between divisions of gender, of race, of sexuality. There's all kind of religion, of course. There's all kinds of divisions that lead to conflict. So I think the notion of wholeness, if it can be validated across multiple disciplines like science, philosophy, psychology, um, if it can have sort of a universal grounding, I think it might help us move towards peace, which was one of Virginia's wishes, that there could be peace
mm.
within, between, and among. So I think it is a very important issue, um, that we're trying to explore here. Um, what's your experience with wholeness, personally? Can you share that? When have you felt? Do you feel it all the time? What's it like on the inside experience of that for you?
No, I think that I find wholeness at very different levels, kind of. You know, to me, a wholeness, I can feel it in myself, that kind of everyday thing. But I think in terms of deep meditation, there is there it goes way beyond it. Like if I look at a, if you look at thoughts, you're talking about thoughts there for a while. You know, if I look at I'm thinking, and then I'm not. I might go below thinking when I watch television, and I sort of just do nothing. I go below thinking, and then if I can go below thinking, like veggie, be a kind of zombie.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and then I go above thinking, which for some people haven't experienced. And if they go beyond thinking, then there is a feeling of oneness. So in a meditation plan, I can go beyond what I would call, and others have called, beyond thinking. There's no thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a different meditation than I'm watching my thoughts, which is one way of meditation, but in a more what I might call at this moment spiritual plane, I go beyond that thought pattern. And when I'm beyond that thought pattern, I feel when I come back that I have been connected with the universe, that I am one with the universe, that is
Mm-hmm.
there's a oneness there. That would be my personal experience of what I'm talking about in terms of what the words wholeness would be.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, then oneness is to me wholeness. So I don't know if I would differentiate much between oneness
Mm-hmm.
and wholeness. So some
Yeah.
people in the East, they would talk more about oneness, one with the universe,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or you are one, but you don't experience it because we're so busy experiencing ourselves at a lower vibration, so that the greater and greater separation takes place. Even when you talk about feelings, you, we have different culture background, so we we become further and further apart. Well, as you go higher on these vibrations, my thought is that you then become more and more connected with everything else.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be a simple answer for me.
Yeah, I think there's this distinction in one of the conversations that I heard between Krishnamurti and David Bohm. They use the words thought and thinking differently, and what um, within the Satir model, one of the survival coping stances is super reasonable. And I know your friend and colleague Stuart, how
Stuart Piddock, yeah.
yeah, Stuart Piddock, he wrote a paper about super reasonableness, and he wanted to reframe it as pseudo super reasonable. He was sort
So
of critiquing the use of that uh, as a survival coping stance. And anyways, I think it's important, this distinction, because I think there can be experience of the transcendent that certainly transcend words, that transcend thinking in the traditional formal sense. But I think there can also be a connection to wholeness or oneness that expresses itself through some words too. And so I want to make this distinction because I don't want to give thinking a bad rap. I think it is an important, like because otherwise, like, what's the point of this conversation? Like, we're trying to think and we're articulating certain
mm,
thoughts, but hopefully what's happening is that we're not just regurgitating fixed patterns of thoughts, that we're really trying to work something out that we can't pin down specifically. And I think that would be dangerous. It's what you said about the word "and," that can be a continuous unfolding, um, but that thinking, at least, is, I think, an important part of it is being aware of what is the difference between a thought, something that's maybe just a fixed habit, that a conclusion that I have sort of fixed in my mind and in my body and my way of being, that may actually block me from connecting to oneness, that may block me from connecting to other people. When I was out this morning with my son, I just had this thought, because I used to be quite devout Christian when I was in high school, and I was the president of the high school Christian fellowship, and that was a really important part of my life. And after a few years of university, and what I was challenged by, I was meeting so many people that I really liked that had a different take, a different religion, a different philosophy. And I just couldn't reconcile, how can I connect with these people if I'm in a particular frame? And one of the things is, as we talk about these things, is I want to be able to have an understanding of the world where I'm not excluding anyone. I want to be able to connect in a very real and in a very deep way with everyone that's willing. And I think that's what I saw Virginia doing. She's traveling around the world, being able to support change and transformation in so many different countries, that she was engaging in these universals that we're exploring right now. Yeah, what do you make of
Well, yeah.
that?
So, see, to me, you're raising a question. I'm going to be whatever, a Buddhist or Hindu, and therefore, I will I will only relate to people who are at that kind of a level. And now we're saying, I think what I hear you saying, so about, is that we're connecting at different levels. So I want to connect at you with the emotional level, and at the mental level, and maybe at the spiritual level.
Mm-hmm.
So there's not just this one connection that you have to go into samadhi and then you can connect. I think
Mm-hmm.
we need, and I think Satir talking about connection isn't just at the spiritual level. It's also at the physical level, at the emotional level, at the mental level.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I think you're saying something similar to that. You want to be connected with people at different levels. Now,
Mm-hmm.
some people who have no experience or no awareness of that wholeness, you can still connect with them at different levels. Even just you can play with them, you can have a little game with them. There's connection at that level. So I thought what could be about is we want to continue, we want to raise the variation, the different levels of connection. And you're writing about connection. So now, how can you and I, even on a Zoom kind of thing, how can we connect at that level? So maybe we have words like, okay, if I have more compassion, I have more love, I have more gratitude, I have more joy, I have more bliss, and I'm in that elevated emotional state, and you are at that state too, say, then we are connected at the total picture, the total picture of life that we're
Mm-hmm.
experiencing.
I think those words that you used, love, compassion, acceptance, I I I would think of them, I would differentiate them. There can be emotional, there can be emotions attached to them, but I would think of them actually as maybe different, or a higher level, or more transcendent than
Yeah,
emotional
yeah, I
states in
do too.
themselves. So,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah,
which is okay. So maybe they can be thought of as energy, or they can be thought of consciousness. So if I start to intentionally, and so the Buddhists do this, they have a meditation called loving kindness, where they're specifically reflecting on loving kindness, compassion towards myself, towards others whom I have difficulty with. And they're in this meditative state, a person is practicing, trying to enrich their awareness, enrich their consciousness with an energy that's different than, let's say, the survival coping energies of fight, flight, or freeze, or
Mm-hmm.
blaming and placating, so that the quality of their consciousness is inherently different, and um, somehow more fluid, somehow more flexible, somehow clear. And yeah, I think those universal words, which I think can be found in the major religions of the world, things like love, compassion, the golden rule. Um, when we're if we can find a common pillars, um, then maybe we can get out of the Tower of Babel, and we can start being able to talk to one another and connect to one another. I think what you're saying in terms of being able to connect on certain levels and then not, I think that does introduce incongruity that will obviously limit our connections, and so I'm interested, like, to have enriching human connections. What will that take? What kind of shift in consciousness? And one of the things that I'm learning from Krishnamurti, who's difficult to listen to, honestly, he speaks in very kind of cryptic ways, but I'm realizing the reason why he does that is, I think one of the reasons why he does that is because he's trying to disrupt the attachment to conclusion, the attachment to what we think we know, um, and to to be to feel through. Okay, this isn't just a thought. This is not just another dogma that I'm forming, but this is uh, an energy of consciousness that is alive, that's vital. And I think this gets into Virginia's language, Virginia Satir's language of life force. That what she was, I think one of the reasons why
Yeah.
she was able to work so effectively is she was able to be in touch with that vital flowing force in her, and then to connect and to encourage that out of the people that she was with. Um,
Yeah, I've seen her do that. Yeah.
can you describe that, or describe life force a little bit from what you learned from Virginia, what you saw with her?
Well, see, to me, then there are all kinds of things. To me, it was like having a sense of being in tune with yourself, you know, or take a look at all these things that get in the way, like disappointments, unhappiness, judgments, feelings like anger, fear, all that. To go beyond that, to become in tune, which I think we very often refer to as being congruent. But to her, I think congruent meant really being in tune with that self, the I am, being in tune with that, and then bring that kind of energy, that kind of human thing. You know, like I want to give you an example because I had the great privilege of also getting to know Carl Rogers.
Mm-hmm.
And when people and I would meet Carl Rogers, we would kind of be in awe with him because of him and who he stood for. And then when you became in touch with Virginia Satir, yeah, I would suddenly I feel great.
Mm.
It's not just I feel so great about Carl Rogers. I feel great about me when I'm with Satir. That's
So
been the biggest difference between meeting him or others that are of such high status in our community to when meeting with her. I would feel so validated and connected, or it was even like she could raise my vibration. So it could be just, okay, I just want to be with you. I just want to be with you. All I need to do is, I want to be with you. And if I'm any time with you, I will feel better. And what I feel is what she would do, what she was able to do is she would able to raise one's uh, congruence, not the good best word, but the level of being at the energy level without even talking to you, just to be in her presence.
okay.
Am I
So,
making sense?
well, it
Yeah.
begs the question, how, John?
How? Well, how? To me, no, that's not so bad. To me, it's just that question is easier. It's the next question that's more difficult. So, the the question, the first answer, that she would be in a different state of consciousness
in herself.
in herself. So
Mm.
that's it. Now the next question for me is how to get there. That's another
Mm.
aspect of it for me. So to me, it's not the what as much as the how. The what to me is that she would be in a state of consciousness, of such a higher level of consciousness, that she would bring that level, that energy.
Mm.
Now,
So you feel that
so
Carl Rogers I hate to be sort of hierarchical about it, but maybe that he was functioning at a lower level of vibration or of energy than Virginia?
he would be, well, yeah, I don't know if I ever told you, but I have a tape of them. They did
You
2 day,
sent you sent
which
that to me. Yeah, you sent
yeah,
that to
I
me.
sent
I
it to
listened to
you.
it. Yeah.
So what I would say, no, I wouldn't quite go that far. I would say that he would contain it more. He would contain it more than
Mm.
she would. She would be much more generous about shining it,
And
like
sharing it with others.
sharing it. So it would be like I have a light, like I have a light here that I can turn up and down. She would shine it out, whereas he would contain it more. So I wouldn't say that he didn't have it. It's just that he would be much more internal inside of himself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you wouldn't feel that coming from him until you spend really some time with him. And then
Vir-
you'd say, yeah, that's he's got it. He's got it.
mhm. Virginia would say something about lighting a candle. Can you share what she said about that? Because Krishnamurti has a different take on that, or maybe the same. So I'm just wondering, can you kind of
Right.
refresh my memory about what she'd say about candles and lighting
Uh,
candles?
well, see, yeah, I don't know. Okay, see if I can have the words for it. Uh, she felt that we were what a jewel, say, of ourselves, or we were a light. Light
Hmm.
would be the probably better word.
Hmm.
We were a light, and then if she could help you or me light our own candle, that we would shine. That meant for me. That meant that we would have our own self-worth, our own self I am would be an or our essence would be a better word, that we would we would connect with our essence, be more our essence, and shine it to
Hmm.
let it manifest would be a better word.
Hmm.
I'm manifesting my own life energy.
Yeah.
In order to do that, I might need a little external assistance to help me acknowledge that and
Mm.
experience that.
And I think the picture that I don't know if this is accurate to what Virginia said, but the picture that I have from people that have described it is, if I'm a light unto myself, the best of what I can do is shine my light around you so that you can get to a place where you're lighting your own candle, and then be aware of the light that's shining within you. Not that I'm going to light your your light for you or turn it on for you, because I think there's I mean, just obviously this is a metaphorical language or symbolic language, but I think there's something in the way that we share energy with one another that's very important as it relates to, let's at least say, human boundaries. Because I think we are trying to talk about um, wholeness here, right? And I think there's a difference, at least when I think about couples. There's a difference between couples where both partners are standing on their own 2 feet with their dignity and a positive sense of their self-worth, as distinct from relationships that I've seen and have worked with where both of the partners really don't have a way of being in touch with their self or have a positive sense of self-esteem. They're much more like leaning on one another. So if one walks away, the other collapses. Um, yeah, what's your take on this notion of lightness, the lightness
Well,
of being?
I think the we got to go beyond the metaphor, and beyond the metaphor is that we are spirit, but we don't realize it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like I need to find it somewhere. It's already there. To me, it's
Right.
like we are already spirit, but
Right.
we're so busy at a lower level of existence that we don't even know we are
Great.
spirit.
Great. Oh, I like
And,
that. I like that because I
and
think.
so,
Mhm.
go ahead.
No, I was just going to say I like that because I think the patterns that we develop for survival are what traps the light or blocks us from being aware of that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
we're
so to me, it was a metaphor, but it's not a complete metaphor.
hmm hmm
To me, there is this basic belief that we are all there already.
yes.
You already have an essence. You already essence. You are
Mm,
already spiritual. You already have that part. It's now a matter of how do you get to manifest it? How do you get to experience it? How do you manifest it? How do you share it? Aspect of it. And so one way is to show that I will show it that I have it. And now I hope you believe that you have it and you will find it. And then we both can be lit.
hmm hmm Or we can both know that we were light the whole time.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
that's one of the realizations. Oh, I had
Yeah.
this whole
Yes.
aspect.
Yes. Yes.
I
There
mean,
isn't a transition from the darkness is because something's
mm,
covering the light, not that it wasn't there. And
mm,
maybe what, in the role of therapist, what we're helping to do is to um, remove the things that block. Because I think a concrete example of this is when people can realize that their light has been shining in the coping that they had. There's life energy in the use of dissociation or of the defense mechanism that they have because they wanted to survive,
mhm,
or they blame themselves for their parents' abuse because they didn't want to be abandoned. So it's much more empowering to say it was my fault. I did it. I'm no good. It's limited, obviously, but it's done because of a desire to stay connected or to belong or
mm.
to receive love. So there's light in that, even though it's malformed or limited, very limited. Um, okay, so how are we doing with wholeness? I don't want to deviate too far. What are we
Yeah.
saying that is
Well,
can tie back into
so
wholeness?
let's see if we can look at wholeness as different levels. I'm whole within myself. I'm whole in a relationship. I'm whole with the universe. I'm whole. Their wholeness could be different size, almost different size.
You mean
I
different
can
scales, like different scales? So
different.
there's a
Yeah,
family level, there's a community level, there's a
yeah,
country level, there's a world level, there's a
yeah,
cosmic level,
yeah.
like
But
that?
also, there's not. Yeah, if you look at it as just from yourself to your friends to your family to the universe, that still might be too shallow.
hmm
There's, there,
hmm
I think we also need to go into depth. That might be the breadth of it. It includes everybody. So that would be one aspect of wholeness. I think a lot of people talk about it when we're talking about our racial conflicts. I think we're talking very much at the very physical level. We're all the same aspect of it. I think wholeness has a much deeper meaning that it includes much more energy, much more spirit, much more universal aspects of the universe,
hmm
much more energy of a deeper level.
hmm
So, so
So,
I would like to
mhm.
keep wholeness or as a contribution to depth, not
Okay.
just width.
So I wonder if I could introduce the word consciousness as part of our exploration of wholeness, which is is my consciousness mine and distinct from yours, or is there a connection between our consciousness, right? Uh, is there a consciousness that's whole that we're in touch with that not only transcends bodies but maybe transcends time and transcends space? And this
Yeah,
is
I
a
think
question.
there's two factors to that. For my consciousness, I have your, you have your consciousness, and they connect. Now, if I take it to the next level, then I might find that they're actually the same. That your consciousness and my consciousness, there is only one consciousness. For
Hmm.
instance,
Okay, so but
right?
that sounds a little bit incoherent, or it sounds that sounds confusing. How can we be both separated and connected at the same time? I think that's what you're saying.
Yeah, but no, that's yes. So that's what I'm saying. Yes, I am definitely saying that. Okay.
Hmm.
So how are we going to explain it? Because one time, how are we going to explain that you are, you're saying in one that you're the same, you're different, and you're the same, you're the same, you're the same,
Hmm.
or we're connecting at the level of sameness, one another, satir kind of thing. We're like the level of sameness, but maybe what I think, and maybe that what David Bohm might have say, there is only one.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, I think when we have our particular thoughts, um, we may we can call that consciousness. It's a form of consciousness, but I think once that consciousness takes a form, right? Like a once material takes a solid form, I say this is a cup. Now this is separated from all other cups. And so once my consciousness takes on a particular identity, a particular social location, age, social insurance number, then that's what creates the division. But if I can realize that there's also consciousness within me, maybe there's way more of this energy of consciousness than those particular forms. Is that just within my body? Or is that energy also what allows me to transcend my own limitation? Is that what allows me to connect to another human being? Is that what's universal? Um, I'm not exactly sure, but I do know what I do experience is that when I can let go of my attachments to things, then I do get a greater sense of freedom and peace. And it does feel like I'm not taking my thoughts so seriously. I feel it. Maybe I feel disappointed about something, or I
Mm,
feel annoyed, or I feel um, hurt by something. But I just see that as a particle of consciousness flowing in a particular way.
mm,
But there's a whole universe
mm.
surrounding that, and it doesn't mean that I am going to choose to just ignore it. Um, but I guess if I have that perspective, if I can be in touch with that, then I can see a whole variety of choices. And then not only that, if there's a particle of resentment or hurt that's floating around in me, then I can start to connect to the energy of consciousness to surround that particular particle of resentment with compassion, with acceptance, with love, which I would say is not just about me. I think that's about the universality of being part of humanity, right? Because if it's just about me, if I'm only empathizing from my perspective, it's limited, it's too small. Um, so there's something this word that I made up, which is particularizing, like particle, but making it a particle. I think we do that naturally, but I think that entraps us um,
Mhm.
into corners somehow.
But before you talked about, can we experience both at the same time? Can we can we experience our particle and our wholeness at the same time?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
Because it seems like we need to do that, so that you can take responsibility for your physical level of existence,
Hmm.
your relationship level of existence, and the universal wholeness of your existence. Can we vibrate our being at all three or four or whatever levels there are?
Hmm. Hmm.
And it seems to me we need to do that.
Yeah. Well, I think that is a good definition of congruence. um, the um, the the balance of things or the harmony of things between these different levels would seem to me to be congruent, where, and this is why I've been using this image of the tree to try to unite or to show a relationship between the hierarchical level and the seed level, which is on let's say at a spiritual level or on the level of self. There is a sameness. As a human being, at least, we all have blood flowing with us. We all use oxygen to live. Um, and then we have different roles. We have different skills. We have different resources within us. We also have many of the same universal resources. But to bring those things together as a whole within ourselves, to see that wholeness within ourselves, and to see maybe our own individual life as an expression of the cosmos. Like one of the things I've been thinking about is time, and this is something that David Bohm explores a lot with Krishnamurti, which is what is the nature of time, and if we can be aware that we artificially demarcate yesterday, today, tomorrow, or this hour from last hour, these are all artificial boundaries, just like boundaries around countries. We think them, becomes a thought, and then now we treat it like it's a reality. And when we experience a distortion of time, that could be because we're really lost into some kind of neuroses, but it could also be because of a state of flow. It could be a state of beauty, a state of awe, and then when we lose attachment to our sense of time, what is the quality of our consciousness? And I think that is about the dissolution, the letting go of the rigid particles of thought, the rigid patterns of coping stances that we can get into.
So one of my grandsons told me about time, so I think I can tell you about time.
Mm-hmm. Please.
He says, when I put my hand on the stove, time is, I really move fast, and I really notice it that I put my hand on too long. But he says, when I'm in the car with my girlfriend, there's no time. It just flows. Yeah. So 3 hours go by and I didn't even notice it. But if I put my fingers on the stove for 3 hours, they just wouldn't be there. So the difference is very subjective in terms of how we experience time. That's how he was trying to explain the theory of relativity to me the other day, a couple of years ago. So yeah, time is a big factor in terms of that. But to me, it's like it's still, we want to go, when you talk about time, you're going right into the kind of quantum physics time frame, like Einstein's warp time and and space are all one kind of thing. But in our own kind of aspect of it, how do we manage time? Is time managing us, or are we managing time?
Yeah.
It's already a very big challenge for most of us.
Well, I think if we can play with time, which is, if I'm not conscious, then time will enslave me, because the hierarchical context that surrounds me, other people's expectation around time, will drive me to meet those expectations so I can be good, I can think well of myself, I can avoid breaking family rules, like, be on time, or other people's expectations. So there's all that sort of rigidity around time. But if I'm, let's say, grounded within myself, and I could be aware that time is a construct, and I can use it when it fits, and I can completely let it go. So right now, as I'm with you, how I've played with time is I've made sure that we have a couple hours to just play. you know, and and as we're talking, I don't want to think about time. I don't want to worry about it. I don't want to think I have to do this next or that next. I just want to be
Mm-hmm.
completely here with you. And um, I have like faint maybe thoughts or feelings about time, but I want to try to be as relaxed with time as possible. So I'm working on my attachment with time, let's say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, the phrase that I always remind myself, it's non-reusable. You can't reuse it. You can't put it in the bank. You know, I didn't use my time yesterday, so I have enough more today. It's not done.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
for me to remember that it's not reusable,
yeah,
I can't bank it and use it for later.
yeah. I don't know if it's Warren Buffett, but somebody with a lot of money said, it might have been Steve Jobs. He said, time is a more valuable resource than money for what the
Yeah,
reason that you're just saying.
yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
Money, if you lose it, you can always make it. You can make up for it,
Hmm. Hmm.
but time you can't. Yeah.
Hmm.
But I'm still playing with your idea about looking at wholeness from different levels. That there is
Well,
not one sense of wholeness. There's
well,
a
I would
wholeness.
say I say we could just jump to let's if we could jump into the cosmic wholeness and skip past because everything else is about thought. Everything else is about a pattern of a particular way of thinking about that. But if we were to try to let go of that and and be aware of our attachment to the boundaries, the particularizing of um, you know, this is my country, this is my home. Um, that's all necessary on a functional level, but I think to experience wholeness, those kinds of thoughts would get in the way.
Well, I like the phrase you just used. If you talk about cosmic wholeness, you immediately know that you're talking about something different than
Yeah,
this wholeness at the very basic level. This belongs to me and this is who I am. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
cosmic. And what I'm trying to remember that if Satir had used that word, I would have been much more in tune with what she was talking about.
Hmm.
Even though I don't think she used the word, I think she meant it. She meant wholeness at the cosmic level. Yeah.
Well, I think my impression from what I've seen of Virginia's presentation is she was so fluid in her use of words that she would use a word one way in one situation and then same word in another
Mhm.
context. For example, self-esteem is one of those words. Sometimes she would use it in a cosmic sense of being connected to life force, and then at other times she would use it in that more formal psychological sense of feeling good about yourself.
Yeah.
So she was hard to keep track of. So I
Yeah.
think she
But
was,
she
yeah,
might have used congruence the same way though.
yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly.
And that's why
Because
I made it.
all those definitions are valid. Um, but I think what I'm trying to work out with you is, well, sort of from our think tank group, what is the ground of being from which she worked? And I think understanding this larger wholeness within the frame of the cosmic is important because one of the things I've been thinking about is death, my own death. My mom died in January, so these questions of um, what what happens to consciousness when there isn't a body. And it's funny, my wife, she said, well, she says this often. It's like, well, it's the same thing that happened, before you were born. It's just, you know, nothing. I said, well, hang on a second. What do you remember before 3 or before 4? You know? Does that mean that some kind of consciousness wasn't happening just because you don't have a declarative memory of it? And as I'm watching my son, who's just about 3.5, he's certainly having all kinds of experiences. His consciousness is going through all kinds of learnings and growth. And who knows what he'll have in his declarative memory when we talk about it 5 years from now, 10 years from now. So I just don't know. I think for me, it's just it's a big mystery about the nature of, obviously, the nature of consciousness, but it's a mystery even within the years that I have, because I don't know what about, like, and it's interesting because one of the experiences I've had in the last 24 hours is I'm able to recall some memories in a visceral way that I normally don't have access to. So just like eating a particular meal or certain emotions come up, and I'm not sure what that's about, but I think when I'm vividly remembering something, it does kind of feel like time travel in a way. And so then there's that notion of playing with
Yep.
time. You know, when I'm really in the memory, and I'm feeling all that, um, you know, and maybe that can be those trance-like states and psychedelic states, and the state of consciousness outside of the body. And there's been lots of reports of things like that by um, non-ordinary states of consciousness, for example, like Stanislav Grob's work. But um, I don't know. So this starts to open up all kinds of mysterious things about, you know, what is consciousness, what is experience. But I think it's
Yeah.
relevant to wholeness because we're trying to at least draw a map around what's the territory that we're exploring, right? And to not get bogged down by any particular thing, which I think the psychotherapies, and one of the things I appreciate about Virginia's work was she didn't limit herself to any particular frame, um, and I think that that has allowed her work to touch upon so many different fields, and has stimulated our curiosity about how big this work can be, what it can really impact.
Yeah, when she talks about first birth, second birth, third birth, fourth birth,
Yeah.
kind of thing. See, there are some developmental, that could be developmental kind of thing, or it could be just time. Again, it's time based too. But the fourth birth, she talks about, calls it consciousness. So to me, then from third birth of becoming responsible for your own behavior, your own action, your own life, excuse me, to a higher level of consciousness, it's right there. She has mentioned it. She just hasn't developed it to the point where it makes so much sense to us. But I
Mm-hmm.
think it's been there all along. Just same as with wholeness. I think it's been there all along. We don't have to look for it. We just have to look for it clearer or
Mm-hmm.
keener or more vividly or deeper so that we can understand it. But yeah, she had it. She somehow had it all
Well,
the
I
time.
think she worked from that basis, right?
Yeah,
She worked from this cosmic
yeah.
basis, and I think that's what made her work so powerful. Um,
Well,
because yeah,
yeah, I want to make sure that we don't make it just a casual kind of thing. Like she said, like operate it. So sometimes I was using a terrible word. I said, okay, she is a person who connects with the public, the so-called masses. So she has a message for the masses, how to be more responsible. And then she has a message for the more enlightened people to be more whole to the universal level. So to me, it's like we have these people that, say, Ken Wilber talks about, operating at different levels of reality, and it seems like she wanted to talk to all levels. So some go there and it's like a conversation or just a little simple kind of level of understanding how I behave and how I can change and how I can touch with my feelings. And the other higher level could be like, who am I? And how can I connect with the universe and how can I be part of the universe at the conscious level? So it seems to me that she does the whole spectrum of life instead of just one level.
So do you think that she does that with everyone, or are you saying that she does different levels with different people?
Well, see, the way I have tried to explain it to myself is she did as a teacher, and I was a teacher way back into it. She was a teacher with different grades in the same classroom, and she had to teach these
Mm-hmm.
people at different levels. And so sometimes I describe Satir in terms of, imagine she is still a teacher teaching at different levels.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're going there, you can, if you're at grade one, you're going to hear her at grade one, and then it makes sense to you. But if you're grade two, you're going to also hear it, it's meaningful for you, and so forth. So I sometimes challenge my audience and say, now, if that's so, what level are you hearing me at? What level are you working in terms of that? Are we at the elementary level at grade one, or are you at level grade? Are you at level six? Because if you're at level six, then I will answer the question this way. If you're at level one, I will answer the question this way. And I try to be consciously aware, if I can, at what level they are experiencing their sense of reality. And then my answer will be more fitting for them.
Mm-hmm.
So some people, I say, okay, I will answer that question at that level. If that doesn't mean anything, it's okay. It might not mean anything to you at all,
Mm-hmm.
but it happens to mean a lot to him or her because I know where she's coming from, based, or at least I guess that I know where she's coming from. My picture is that Virginia Satir would talk at all those levels at the same time, whereas most of us talk at one level or two levels at the most.
Mm-hmm. Um, yeah. So what you're saying is really confusing me. So I'm
Oh,
and so let me try to explain my confusion. So very sort of taking your, let's say it's an analogy of the classroom and these grades, one could think of those things as one's intellectual level, right? So there's gradations along one's
yeah, right.
intellectual capacity, but I don't think that's what you mean. I think you mean something much more diverse than that, across levels of um, maybe the mandala, the level of where are you emotionally, where are you in your consciousness, where are you in terms of your spiritual development, say like across grades, across all different components of what make up a person, right? So
Yeah,
that's a very complicated thing to do. But so maybe I'll share a different picture of it, which is I think I think what is useful is to be in touch with what we're calling this cosmic wholeness all the time. Because I think if we allow that to be the foundation, even if I'm talking about something that is intellectual, if my grounding from where I'm speaking to you is from that sense of wholeness, that sense of a larger wholeness that transcends person, place, country, then maybe what I'm expressing is a life energy or a love that will help put that person in a connection with me, perhaps, that they'll take whatever it is they need to take. And I can create a form that, and I know Virginia, she wanted to be able to speak at a level that someone in grade 2 would be able to understand. She wanted to speak in as simple a way as possible so that most people could get it. But I think it's the foundation of what we're saying of wholeness and of the largest map of wholeness was so important, so that you could speak at all these different levels and not get lost into, well, I'm speaking from a scientific perspective, or I'm speaking from a logical perspective, or I'm speaking from an emotional level, because that separation is, I think, what creates confusion. But if I'm looking at the largest frame possible, then I include all those parts, and I can speak about them in a simple way, whether I'm speaking to someone who's 2 years old or speaking to someone who's 102. Um, I don't know. Does that add anything to what you were saying in terms of the?
yeah. See, I can I can only perceive at the level that I can perceive. I can only understand at the level I can understand. And if I have to understand, and I would use mathematics for my picture, I can only understand the mathematics level I'm capable. When it comes to trigonometry or even beyond that, I get kind of lost aspect of it. So I like the idea that you're talking about. I will be trying to be in touch with my wholeness, whatever that means, and I will try to manifest that spirit, that energy. But that doesn't mean my audience has the same experience. They're worrying about their kid not going to school. They're worrying about how they're going to make their next meal. They're operating at a very different level than I experience myself. So I'm not going to expect them to make sense or make meaning or even appreciate if I'm talking about universal wholeness. They want to talk about how to survive. So they're at this sort of survival level. So can I touch their survival level?
Mm-hmm.
And I talk to them at the level of their survival so that I can be in touch with how they experience themselves and help them lift up their experience to a higher energy.
But wouldn't you say you also connect to the level of their yearnings, which is a different level? You're not just in touch with the survival energy.
Yeah, I will be in touch with their universal level maybe way before they are.
Yes, yes. Yeah, but I think they experience that, maybe not consciously.
Yeah, they will
Right?
experience me differently. They will say, "Oh, that was different experience. I don't know what's the difference."
Yes, yes. Okay, so
I really
good.
experience that differently.
Yes, yes. They might not be able to articulate what's happening. Like we're
Yeah,
trying to articulate something that's well, anyways, it doesn't belong to a
yeah.
particular discipline, right? So I can't say that it's like can be found in this measuring cup, but um it's a quality of wholeness that I'm trying to be in touch with myself.
I'll give you an example. Can I give you an
Yeah,
example?
yes, please.
Okay. There was a time I have an office in my home, so I've been seeing clients in my home. It's special entrance, special exit, special waiting room. But anyway, it's in the home.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a time many years ago where we were going to sell the house, and the couple came there, and the man was quite upset about me selling the house. I don't know why, but anyway, he was upset. And his wife said, "Why are you upset? It's just, you know, we can go wherever he goes. We can go."
You mean this is a couple that you saw?
Was a
In,
client, yeah.
is a client you
So the
saw?
client,
Okay,
the husband of the client of the couple, was upset that I was going to sell the house
okay.
because he liked my office so much. And she said, "No, no, no, it's not the office. It's John. It's John that has the energy. It's not the office." Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think that to me is telling. That's what I think, what I heard you say. That's what you bring into a relationship, especially if it's a client counselor relationship. You bring that whole life force there, but the client might not have any access to that at that moment consciously. They're talking about their pain or their trouble or their feelings. They're not in tune with that. But I know it's there, and they might experience mine, but they
Mm-hmm.
might not be able to put it in words, but they could say, being with him or her in a contextual relationship is very peaceful. It's very, very trusting. It's safe. And so I carry that with me. Say, now if I'm very busy and it had something terrible just happen, and I go and see my client, I assume that they very often could pick that up. They say, okay, John isn't here he's not here fully today.
Yes.
He's kind of busy with something else. And so it's what I'm trying to see is I need to know or assess. We very often do it verbally, but can I assess my client where he or she's at any given time?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
can I help them raise their their level of existence?
Mm-hmm.
So the
Mm-hmm.
problem, say the problem is not the problem, is one of Satir's saying. And so if the problem is not the problem, if the problem is actually the solution, then what can I go deeper to find out what's really going on?
Mm-hmm. No, I think I'm agreeing. I think we're saying we're on the same page. I think what I would say to clarify it is the form of which I might use to give a piece or to make a connection or uh, execute an intervention. The form of that uh, would have to depend on their level of consciousness.
Yeah.
But I think what we're talking about in terms of this sense of wholeness or being connected to that within myself and being connected to that in the other, and knowing that in the space between us, it's all surrounding us. I think that's always there all the time. And I think
Mm.
I'm better served in my
Yeah.
role as a therapist being aware of that and realizing that we're swimming in those waters. They may not have a conscious articulation of that, and I might not either. But I think when the work is flowing in a particular direction, it's because I'm in touch with that level. So it's it's yeah, coming back to the seed model, it's like a particular form needs to arrive in a moment because we are living in time and space. So I need to say something that's going to be at the level of the person who's asking the question, or
Mm-hmm.
who the teenager that I'm working with, or the 7-year-old, or the couple, whatever level of coping or level of consciousness that they bring. But the larger ocean, the larger body of water, is this notion of wholeness. And that informs the value that I communicate to them through my eyes and the way
Mm-hmm.
that I use my
Mm-hmm.
voice. And um,
Yeah.
so that's it's both there and then manifesting in whatever specific way it needs to. Um, okay, how are we doing with wholeness? I think that's
Well,
been a pretty
I think we're going to have to explore it some more.
good. And what do you experience? What have you been experiencing through this conversation? How has it felt for you? If I can ask you
Well,
the
the
inside
feeling is okay. The thing is, it's like talking with you about it. I have to put it in words, so I'm feeling like, okay, a lot of these things I'm sort of kind of aware and have a past of it, but I've never put it in words. So I'm enjoying the idea or the struggle actually of
experience.
putting it in words in terms of that. So that will give me a chance to continue this thought, how do I put it in words? What do I understand in
Hmm.
it? Because sometimes I will stop at the intuitive level. I have a feel for it. I have a feeling what it means, but I've never voiced it to anybody because no one around here is interested. So I don't verbalize it. And I'm just so aware from our discussion that you can verbalize it much better than I feel I can in
Hmm.
terms of that. That doesn't mean that we have such a different understanding of it, but
No.
need
Hmm.
to I need to be more in my words.
Hmm.
That's
Well, I
so.
think I think that's the relationship between the form and the formless, or between what we're calling being connected to this universal energy, and then um, because my sense is if I can articulate this, whether if a person's an atheist or if they have a particular belief, if I can connect to this universal cosmic life force in a way that um, satisfies them intellectually, that satisfies them rationally, that is logical, but then also transcended and can explain the experiences they're having when a loved one dies and they're completely in chaos,
Mhm.
then we're interacting at multiple levels, and they know that I want to be with them at all these different levels. I don't want to just satisfy one level, wherever they go, I want to be able to say, I'm thinking about that with you, or I'm feeling through that with you. And I don't want to leave anything alone out of my own ignorance, or, and I think this is what you're helping me do, is explore this realm, which I'm very curious about, because I feel it intuitively. I'd like to enrich my articulation of it, not because the
Mhm.
articulation is more important. It's just, I want to have a map so that I can feel a little bit more grounded in it, but then also I might have some phrases or words, or I can have the experience of expressing something, so that when I'm expressing it to people that I'm working with, they'll feel a little bit maybe less, maybe confused, or, you know, um, yeah, because I like things to be clear, but not so rigid that they're not alive anymore. That
Mhm.
we're using language. My hope is that we're using language that doesn't betray that we're engaged in a process here, that there are no conclusions. Once we have a conclusion, then it's dead. But what I enjoy about our conversation is that you're very willing to not make a conclusion. You're very happy to ask the tough questions. So this is important
See,
for me.
to me, when you talked about Stuart Piddock before, my school friend, he is in this verbalization process in terms of that. Most of my experience is through music, so I don't need to verbalize
Hmm.
my experience. I have it through music, so I can have that kind of wholeness experience without really making much use of the language. It's all music kind of. So
Hmm.
I will probably spend more time per hour per day in the music world than in the talking world. And so for me
Hmm.
to be able to, or be encouraged or challenged to put it in words, is very good, because
Hmm.
otherwise I would just say, well, it's just there. It's just like music. How can I have you enjoy my music by just me talking about it? I would have to say, come and listen. I will play it for you,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But in talking, we need to have these words. So to me, it's very helpful. So that's what, when you say, well, how do you feel about this? I say, oh, it generates me my thinking process more than if I were just be left alone.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I think, because you have the experience, and you feel satisfied by that, you're not, I think, tempted as other people might be to try to find it in a book or to find it in a religion, say. Not that I'm saying that there's something wrong with that, but there's potential dangers with that too, right? Like, if I say, um, I've read the book and I follow these precepts, let's say blindly, without being in touch with what's alive in me, and I say I have to cut out certain parts of myself to be able to follow this prescription of how to be a human being, then we get into something like family rules that restrict,
Yeah.
let's say, the free flow of being able to comment on things, or to feel your feelings, or to ask for what you want. And I think that's what Virginia, um, put out into the world through her work and her model, was, what are the things that will facilitate growth? What are the things that facilitate genuine human
Mm.
communication and connection? And um, we're playing with pictures and analogies and metaphors to try to, point at something, but what we're talking about is very different than the experience. And um, but I think talking about it is important, because it's not so much talking about it and saying this is what it is. I think talking about it and using language to say this is not what it is. It's almost like the signpost to say beware of making that conclusion. And I think if anyone listening to this, if that could be the thing, to just to watch your attachment to thoughts, be aware of your own conclusions. And personality disorders are conclusions of how to cope that just don't work. To so
Mhm.
so looking at psychology in that way, or psychopathology in that way, these are rigid conclusions based on, let's say, attachment experiences that don't work for intimacy, say, higher levels of intimacy. They may work for survival, but they don't work for sustainable communication or relationships. Okay, John, I think
So
we've done as well as we can today. I appreciate you